Welcome back to Close Encounters of the Tech Kind. I'm John, leading this troop as we keep on the conversation. We're going to be talking about our perspectives. We bring to you, the viewer, a seasoned tech perspective and a new upcoming tech perspective. We're going to blend old school with new school and see where this technology train takes us. With me today, I've got Mike.
Hi, everybody.
He's part of the old school, the old guard. Grew up with some of the original tech. We've got Jackson.
How's it going?
Jackson has a perspective from a college age kind of perspective. He's immersed in electronics, and have to check out his bio and some of the other episodes we've got. And leading the tech side of things on this flight through the Tech Kind is Artie.
Hello, I am here, and okay, I'm maybe not here. There we go.
Oh, did your avatar disappear?
Yeah, it was taking a while for it to load up, so yeah, it was just pop in when I was addressed instead of just popping around the corner like usual.
That's interesting. So yeah, you'll see him behind his screen. He's making sure that all the tech is running behind the scenes. So come along with us as we dive into a couple stories. We've got a site blocking bill going through our legislation right now at the national level. We've got robots. They're getting to be closer to reality. Jackson's got some news for us on that. Commodore 64, a legacy product that is awesome. Commodore has just changed hands. Mike's got a bit of passion in that one. I can't wait to hear that. And then I want to bring to the table a conversation on remote work and how hackers from North Korea are changing the way remote work can happen. So, without further ado, let's jump into that first story. We've got site blocking happening. That's yours, Artie.
Yes, there's site blocking. So there are a bunch of companies and rights holders that want to have the ability to block websites from being accessed online. Basically, if they feel that it's infringing on their copyrights or anything like that, then they want to have a procedure in place where they just say, this site is doing it, we want to block it. And there are a few countries in the world that have engaged in this in recent years that they're trying to use as examples, and they're kind of bad examples because I think Spain and Italy are the two major ones, with Spain being at the forefront of it. And the problem with a lot of these bills is that they are act first and react later. So they want to get ahead of all the stuff that's out there, and they want to get some of these blocks in place before people understand what the blocks actually entail. And what we have seen in Spain is a lot of tertiary sites that are not infringing get caught up in this, and they get blocked as well. And as far as I've learned, there aren't many recourses for any sites that are blocked to get unblocked. So it's kind of like, hey, go ahead.
So I think I saw something like that. We're talking like football games and stuff, European football.
Yes.
And other
it's mainly like sports, mainly sports types of things. That's
okay.
Mainly
keep going. I don't want to.
Yeah. So say, can I hop in here?
Yeah.
Say you've got like when you say sports, and I mean the whole premise, just make sure I get it. So say I'm ESPN, I stream football. There are several, illegal streaming websites out there that kind of take, someone has an ESPN stream, they just screen record and restream, right, for free. So essentially what the bill is allowing ESPN to, I don't know what the word is, like not apply, but complain essentially, hey, this site is restreaming our stuff. Can you ban them? And then DNS providers just remove them from their lists, or what?
So
A
lot of these
little harder
bills,
than that.
yeah, a lot of these
Go ahead.
bills are a bit more direct, and it's like using um, so how they have gone about it with a lot of them, and what these bills have been built around as well, is the process of they have the ability to say this site is infringing, and without checking or verifying if it actually is, it gets blocked. So it's
Just like
a
MP3s back in the day, where you don't have to go through court. They just have to say, "Hey, that person's hosting 100 MP3s. Here's your big fat bill."
yeah.
Hmm.
There-
So where is it being blocked? Well, where are they proposing it be blocked? Then?
So
Everywhere.
basically, yeah, it would basically be any DNS service within the US, or any internet, like Comcast or Cox, or even at that level, it would say you're not allowed to access these IP addresses or these websites. Or if they do, it would come up with like the FBI logo saying this is not an official source. Watch it over here. Um,
Yeah, we're
it's-
looking at legislators trying to fundamentally change the tech that the internet's built with.
Yes, and they do have some carve-outs that are nice, but it's not enough. It's like there are carve-outs for libraries, so that they can't be, flagged as these are copyright infringers when they have the uh, right to be broadcasting or showing, or lending books and stuff like that. There's also a sunsetting clause that a lot of people that are involved in it want to put in there, because with legislation like this that is so encompassing, you need to go back and look at it after a few years to say, has this been beneficial? Has this been good? What can we change to make it better in the future? So that at least is one thing that some people are fighting to get in there.
So what kind of companies or who's really lobbying for the bill right now? Do you know? Who is it that one is proposing it, and who is opposing it?
The copyright holders,
Mhm.
the ones who have the rights to broadcast the football games or whatever sport, they're the ones pushing for it, because they're not getting the revenue they could,
Mhm.
because the pirate streams are ripping off that content.
So
Yeah.
it's
Everybody
mostly
else is
kind of
against it.
stemming off of the sports industry right now. Then
Well, yes and no.
Intellectual property holders.
So with Spain, their main piracy problem is with sporting events. In the US, it's other things. You've got websites that will host movies and other stuff like that. And it is to target those sites to make them unreachable from a US IP. So it would be a broad block on that. And one of the issues that I brought up that is the overarching thing is they are not, they don't care about collateral damage. But like, that the mom and pop family could be, or the mom and pop shop could be hosting their website on the same server that somebody's hosting one of these pirate contents on. So that server gets blocked. Everything on that server is blocked.
right.
Well, we've run into that before with if you are doing advertising to your customers with email, every tech has dealt with that blacklist flag that you run into when you start sending what is effectively spam messages.
Yeah, and it's your
What's
mail
worse-
server that gets blocked.
Yep. And if
Yeah.
your mail server is used by somebody else because you're using the cheap plan, then if somebody else is misbehaving, you go down too.
Yep.
So if you've got a website that's adjacent to one of these pirate sites, or let's go in another direction. If you've got a pirate that is intelligent enough to stack it on top of some other e-commerce tools, so the IP address is stacked in the mix of not tier 1 places like Amazon or anything, but tier 2, tier 3, like a Toys R Us, kind of thing. Not that they're a company anymore, but why not?
Rest in
They're
peace.
outside the U.S.
Yeah, their site goes down because their neighbor was pirating the stream.
So, sorry, what you're saying, Artie, is they're not in the U.S. anymore, so it's toys are not U.S.
Are we
Toys are not
saying,
US.
are we talking subnets, like entire subnets of addresses too?
Potentially. I mean, it's
It has been
very
done.
Yeah,
it's written by people that don't necessarily understand the technology that they're talking about,
right.
and they are taking the the word of the stakeholders as as law. So they are not seeking outside advisement for a lot of the pending. Well, one of them is, and it's still in the process of being written. But the one that is currently being looked at, not really that great. And it
I
just,
think a good analogy for this would be if you've got a bad actor in a housing development. If you got somebody who's doing a thing, you want to blacklist their street address. You don't want to blacklist the street, and you definitely don't want to take down the whole neighborhood.
Arrest
But-
everybody.
Or the city.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
it's one of those. If the pirate's bad enough, they'll take out the whole city.
Well, here's an example, and I've run into this myself. As a college student, in taking a couple CS classes, they teach you how to create like a low-level web crawler. At least, they give you those skills, but before that unit even starts, they've got, these massive disclaimers and all of these instructions, and it says, do not, do XYZ. Because what can happen if in a web crawler is, there's every site should come with a robots.txt, and that defines, okay, if you are not a human and you're crawling my website, here are the rules you should abide by. Don't download anything bigger than this. Don't make this many requests per second. Keep it underneath a certain threshold. Now, nothing really enforces that, but those who supply the robots.txt themselves. So, for example, as a university student, I can go onto campus and I'm registered under their IP address and say I can start spamming Amazon and ignore their robots.txt file. And then Amazon servers will recognize, hey, this IP address is kind of spamming us and trying to download a ton of files, like just block it. And it's happened before where because a student failed to obey, a robots.txt file, the whole university got blacklisted by, Amazon or something like that. And so it's a huge deal. And so then the university has to then blacklist the student. They have to figure out who it was, blacklist that IP, and then they have to go talk to Amazon and be like, please, it wasn't us, so we promise we'll play nice. And so that it's I feel like it's kind of the same idea. One person can just kind of start spoiling everything. But the difference, what it sounds like, Artie, is that it's coming from like a legal standpoint now, which I don't think has happened before, right?
not in the U.S. There have been attempts in the past to do this, like John mentioned with the Napster stuff. They wanted to, ban people from having internet access, and that didn't go over very well back then, and it doesn't go over very well these days either. But yeah, pretty much. And
It's one of those. I got to keep a pace to this. I think, Artie, sum it up. Like, what do you want the three of us to know about this?
so on this subject, I've got some opinions I'm going to keep to myself, but these two things, the Foreign Anti-Digital Piracy Act, which is the one that is currently being looked at, and the American Copyright Protection Act, which is the one that's still being worked on. These both are good in spirit, but they are functionally detrimental to the internet as we know it, because it's going to make it so easy to injure competition. You don't have to necessarily prove that your copyright is being infringed. You just have to make the accusation, and that can be enough to take down somebody's website. It can be enough to block their IP from being accessed. And
any YouTuber that has had a copyright strike erroneously placed on them by somebody else knows the pain on that.
yeah,
Trying to get your own created content back after somebody says, "Nah, I made that." That's uphill.
Yeah, so I
Oh,
guess I
know.
mean, yeah, I'm not sure. Like, what are we supposed to do then? Because I mean, I support, at least personally, I know copyrights and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's a good thing. Your intellectual property should stay yours, and they shouldn't be able to just be copied and resold and rebranded. So, but at the same time, like you're saying, that's going to kind of change the way the internet is, and especially in the United States where we have First Amendment rights and and all of that, free speech. I think that could start infringing on some of that, and so I don't know. I support. It's like I want both things, so I don't know what's best.
One of those things where you need to have everybody at the table, and you need to discuss these things logically and rationally, and explain and even give the examples. Like, Spain has been dealing with, thousands of websites that are no longer reachable because they were caught up in the torrent of sites that were flagged as infringing by the media group that controls the sports over there. So,
But it sounds like if there's we want both things, then I think they just need to come up with a whole different solution. I don't think that's the way to do it then.
site blocking has
think-
I
never
think it's just a
been
matter.
Yeah, site blocking has never been a solution to anything, because as soon as you block one, like 5 more pop up. And the people that have run these sites, they literally have like 30 or 40 domains ready to go at a moment's notice at all times.
Or can bounce to other servers with different IP addresses until
That too.
they completely run out of IP addresses. I think the biggest challenge has always been that, Jackson, I mean, you're talking about, like, you think way back in the day when the United States Constitution was written and we wanted free speech, it's because you could identify somebody making that speech. And
Mhm.
even when early copyright laws were written, you could identify somebody who was violating a copyright. The problem that we have with the internet is that we have such an ease of anonymity that you can't hold a person responsible until you figure out who that person is. And so they're falling back to, well, if we can't figure out who it is, then we're just going to block the site, and we're going to resort to
Mhm.
site blocking and IP blocking, and basically just cut off the connection as a form of punishment. And that's always going to be a challenge until you can start to identify people. I don't know what other ways are really going to work to get the job done.
Well, and it's one of those really deep challenges because let's say somebody sets up a little server outside the library. The library's got internet access. You can 180 through that if you've got the skills and use that as a point of reflection. Now, if they block the entire library from getting out or an entire university from getting out, they're not doing this by legal means. They're doing this by, hey, I think you're doing this, so you're shut down. So there's no recourse. So an entire college could be shut off for a period of time. I'm curious how long it's going to be until somebody flips the script on these guys and blocks them.
No clue.
But I don't know. But I think we got to flip into the next one, guys.
Mhm.
Let's jump over to the next subject. We were talking about robots.
Yeah,
they're getting
it's
close to
been
being reality.
it's been something that's been continually coming across my radar. And usually it's coming from some sort of manufacturing company. Like the most recent one that I just saw was Amazon hit 1 million warehouse robots, and that's nearly matching. Yeah, 1 million warehouse robots, and warehouses again across the globe. They're global. So
1
1
million.
million, and that's about the number of actual like human people that they have on staff.
So what is there like a breakdown of like average number of robots per facility or anything like that?
Not that I saw. I might be able to see. Let's see. Um, I don't see anything immediately. Artie, I don't know if you can maybe try and
A
find
million
that.
seems like a big number, but then again, I mean, robots really could count that as any size, really,
Yeah, and I think
right?
the what's new and what we're seeing that's new and what really piqued my interest is, I think everyone saw that several years ago they started introducing like the Roomba ones that would just pick up a pallet, move it, do whatever. But now we're seeing they have a humanoid, which is made. I forget the name of the company, but the robot itself is called. Oh, I can't remember. Don't see his name. Digit. That's what it is. And it's so funny. For those of you who are under 6 foot, apparently the robots they're making that are meant to surpass humans are only 5'9". So I think that says something. For those of us who are perhaps under 6 foot tall.
Vertically
But
challenged.
yeah. So I mean, but what I thought was interesting is they're using a humanoid robot, and it's exciting and it's also like concerning. But the reason that's surprising is because Amazon is usually dealing with square boxes. Like that's really easy, and I'm not sure that the human body is necessarily optimized for carrying a square box. Yet they're going to continue using humanoid robots to do a task like that, right? And so what that means is as they're using a humanoid robot, that kind of translates then to a whole lot of other things. And I think the leader in what we've seen for a long time is Boston Dynamics, and they've have their humanoid robots, they have their dog Spot, and they have just like their manufacturing robots that are just like basically large arms. And so then I dug into a little bit more. I hadn't caught up on Boston Dynamics in a while, and their Atlas robot, which is their humanoid version. And I think what everyone saw last was it was this really bulky. It didn't quite look human. It looked like it just kind of had a cut off head. What they have now, their newest Atlas, it looks very humanoid, almost like what you'd see in iRobot,
Wow.
without the face, I guess. But I mean, it's got a head, shoulders, arms, legs, right? And I was watching a couple of their demo videos, and I mean, it's crazy how accurate it feels. Like if you put a skin on that little robot, I'm not sure you'd tell immediately that wasn't a human, right? That the way it walks, the way it moves around is quite impressive. I mean, they have it running, crawling, jumping, all the sorts. It can dance, do whatever. And so then I was looking at it, I was like, okay, well, how are they developing these, and where are we moving towards? And I don't know why I hadn't thought of this before, but the way that they're actually training these robots is not in the real world. They have, and this is where NVIDIA kind of comes into play. NVIDIA also unveiled that they have now a robotics division in developing AI models that are going to be teaching robots how to interact with the world and do certain tasks. So, long story short, what Boston Dynamics has been doing is they have huge server farms that are essentially just running simulations. So you hire someone, they CAD up an accurate CAD model of what your robot is and its movements and capabilities, get a good physics model in there, and you just have it trained. And so, they have their flagship Atlas robot, right? And they didn't need to make 1,000 of them to train them. They just have a server farm do it. And then, then they test it in real life and see how it does. And it was pretty impressive. This little, 3-fingered humanoid robot just picking up stuff, putting it in boxes. And of course, it's nowhere near, iRobot, where you basically have a Navy SEAL But I mean, it's not going to take long for us to get there, and so it's interesting to think of where this is taking us, and with Amazon kind of having that headline of 1 million robots in their warehouses, now they have equal number of robots to people. There's always that fear of, well, what's going to happen to the workforce? Whose jobs are going where and what?
Well, just put context to that million number. There's 1,200 distribution centers for Amazon. So that's like 800 or 900 robots per, and you got to count each shelf has a moving robot that helps.
Right.
Each
Right.
pick and pull, each conveyor, each of the moving things inside their warehouse counts as a robot.
Yeah.
So I can see that number.
Yeah.
Having that all centrally controlled would be a trick, but
How did they decide that? Why go in the humanoid direction? Did they decide that is the most efficient design, or is it a most versatile?
So I think the reason for the humanoid design, I think there's a few reasons, and what Boston Dynamics was actually the only one I saw that kind of addressed, why human. And their thing was, we live in a human world. Everything around us is already designed for a human. So let's just integrate into that. That way we don't kind of separate ourselves from, if we then start designing robots for robots, we have to design a world for robots. Whereas if you're able to design a humanoid that can also interact with our world, we aren't building ourselves out of our own future in a way.
So I guess there's hope that if the robot if the robot breaks, that we could always have a human still go and do the same task and job.
Right.
But
and
I don't know. Ask Ford Motor Company. Ask how many humans have jumped in on the assembly line where the robots were down. And yeah, I'll take over welding these panels for the next little bit. And I don't think the performance is like a human could do it, but I don't think the performance is quite there because they've dialed in those robots to be very precise and exact. And it's a very repetitious thing to manufacture those automobiles or those widgets or whatever's coming off the assembly line.
Well, and the robot that the automotive team needs, those are very expensive one-job robots.
Yeah.
And the only way that makes sense is if they're cranking through a car every 20 seconds or every 10 seconds.
Yeah, so whatever it takes to do that specific task, it does it very well, and it does a lot of them in a given amount of time. Yeah.
The problem Amazon has is you've got the pick and pull kind of thing. You get the shelf to move. What they've reduced is the amount of walking you have to do in their facilities. Now, anybody in Amazon knows you got to still walk, you got to hustle. It's just, that's the name of the game. But Amazon is pushing to get as few steps as possible because that increases their fulfillment ability, reduces time on task. So they got robots that'll pick up the whole shelf and bring it to the picker who's standing in place. They pull thing out of the bin, put it on the box ready to go out to the customer because there's not a good robot to pick up a USB stick or a water bottle or a phone or whatever the box is. I mean, it could be literally anything in their distribution center has to be processed through a single group of people to be then put in boxes or bags and shipped out to the customer.
Right.
And that's exactly where, that's exactly where I think the humanoid part comes in. It does have a certain amount of versatility, and where we're seeing is that these AI models that they're creating, we're removing obstacles, right? And so this is where it's kind of scary and also exciting at the same time. Is when you watch a movie like iRobot or whatever, iRobot's the only one that's coming to mind. But
how about Surrogates?
What's that?
Surrogates.
I've never seen that one.
Stepford Wives?
Oh, I'll tell you about that in a second.
But when you watch these kind of futuristic movies, and it's like slowly becoming less and less of like iRobot, it seems very feasible to me right now, right? Within the next 50 years, maybe even sooner than that.
10.
But yeah, I mean, honestly, 10 is, yeah, now I think about it, 10 years ago was forever ago. And so I think another 10 years is all it's going to take to see some, maybe these coming out into public, right? But what's so cool about these AI models and what they're using, what they're doing with the humanoid robot is they're taking these server farms, and now your robot can just be trained on anywhere. Like, say you want to bring a robot into your home to perform tasks, right?
They're trained in the Matrix.
Right.
Basically, I mean, that's essentially the way I read it too.
Yeah, that's scary. But
You think that's air the robot is breathing?
but I mean, you think about it, and it's exciting to think. We have a lot of in situations where we have assisted living, right? You could easily send a robot and go scan a room, much like a Roomba does nowadays. I mean, a Roomba just does some IR scanning, scans a room, figures out its terrain, and then does its job, right? So you have a similar thing with a humanoid robot. Now it can go to any location, scan a terrain, send it off to the server farm, does some training, good to go, right?
Your little robot will come in pre-knowledgeable of your environment, know every step, know every window, know where all the exits are.
Yeah, I mean, so it's
Fun.
an exciting thing, and it's also the same thing. It's for the same reason it's concerning, to think about where the future's taking us with robotics and AI, and when it all kind of mingles together.
It's like Neuralink.
Yeah, don't factory reset it.
Yeah, Neuralink is exciting until you see the dark side, but it's still exciting because if you're paraplegic or quadriplegic, now you have a life again.
Yeah.
Like you said, with assisted living, that's great. You could have somebody that is now more independent longer in life because they've got a robot that can help them do those little things that are hard for them now, or maybe impossible.
Mm-hmm.
So surrogates, I just got to tell you about that one. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out. It's a movie where you sit down in a chair in your house and you plug into a robot avatar. You walk around in your surrogate, and the company that built the surrogates sold one to everybody. So everybody has a surrogate. So you basically live in your house, but your robot lives your life, but you're in the robot. So you, in the first person, are living your life interacting with other surrogates. It's an interesting premise.
Is that a recent one, or is it a bit older?
It's a bit older. It's what's his name? He's in Die Hard.
Bruce Willis?
Yeah.
2009. Yeah, Bruce Willis.
It's well worth it. It's well worth it. But hate to keep the Close Encounters rolling, but we gotta roll on to the next one. So I'd love to talk about robots for a while, but Commodore 64, I think, is a little bit more important, at least right now.
So this is an interesting thing that has taken place over about the last, well, for us, the public viewing it, it's only over the last month. However, from what we're led to believe from the videos and the news information that's come out, this has actually been a few months in the making. So Perry Fractic, who is the host of his YouTube channel Retro Recipes, and he's my generation, and he grew up as a kid in England, and remembers his first computers that he ever used, and his dad had computers, and sometimes brought a couple things home and used a variety of different computers from back in the 80s. But his favorite computer at the time was a Commodore 64. And I had a Commodore 64 growing up, and there's a lot of fun things. Commodore 64 is the number one selling home computer, at least for the 1980s. I don't know that anything has ever come close to matching its record.
I actually just saw that recently
Mhm.
in an unrelated research thing. But yeah, it is
Right.
as a single standalone model, it is the best selling model ever. Sold the most.
So anyhow, um, as Commodore hit it big with the Commodore 64. They had put out the Commodore PET in the 70s, and that was, you know, an all-in-one machine with a fixed monitor, keyboard, and everything. And it, it sold. There's people that had it. The Apple II came out around that time. And then as we got into the 80s, Commodore had put out the VIC-20, and then came out with the improved version, which is the Commodore 64. And the VIC-20 and the Commodore 64 actually are built on some of the same chip architectures. There's the VIC chip, the video chip that went into the original VIC-20, and then they improved that to become the VIC-2, and that was what went into the Commodore 64. An increase in RAM, and some other things. People loved it. It was used as mostly a gaming machine, I think. I mean, from when I see it, I see people use it as a gaming machine, but it could do a lot of computing too. You could sit down and do a word processor on it. You could sit down and I've even used a couple spreadsheet programs on it. It could do a couple different things, and you had the basic programming language right there at your fingertips, like a lot of other 8-bit computers did at the time. As Commodore went on,
In color. In color.
yeah, and in color. And that's the other thing, is that the Commodore 64 was really neat because it had a revolutionary sound chip in it, and it had a revolutionary video chip in it. Nobody else at that time was doing what the Commodore 64 could do with sound and graphics. Now you move on, and we have the Commodore 128, which is basically like taking two Commodore 64s and putting them together into one machine. So you had twice the amount of RAM, um, an expanded basic command set, and other capabilities that it had. But as Commodore went on, they eventually went out of business in the mid 90s. I think 1994 is the year that they're marked as being kind of out of business. They did acquire
That's
Amiga and had pushed out the Amiga platform for a number of years,
and
but
out of business. You mean they're not selling units anymore? They're
not selling
basically
units
just
anymore. Yeah.
an office.
The other thing about it is that Commodore set themselves up internationally. So you had Commodore in the United States, you had Commodore in Europe and in England, you had Commodore in Australia, you had Commodore in Japan. And there were slight differences because they had to, like for instance, the Commodore 64, manufacturing that machine for those different markets required a little bit of tweaking, because maybe you want a more European character set. Maybe you need a Japanese character set instead of, just the traditional English Roman alphabet, right? So there's ended up being a whole bunch of different brands for Commodore. And when Commodore went out of business, the branding started to change hands. People would buy the branding and try to do something with it, or even just sit on it and not really do anything with it. And I remember even in the 2000s, seeing that Commodore kind of would revive every once in a while on the internet, and you say, "Oh, Commodore, somebody's doing something with Commodore? What's Commodore doing?" And, "Oh, we're making cell phones." Like, really? That's it? Cell phones? And I'm not talking smartphones. I'm talking, this is back in the day when all we were using were just the flip phones. So little flip phones, smartphones, and it's floated around. The branding has floated around to different organizations at different points in time. And so Perry Fractic, the host of Retro Recipes, decided that something needed to be done. He wanted to figure out a way. Can we get ourselves an ability to get some licensing, or can we fix this branding issue? And from what I understand from what he's reporting in his videos, is that there was actually a point that the branding was going to expire, and then it was just going to be a free for all. And if the wrong people picked it up, that it was going to be not good for the community. And so he set about initially just to go and secure rights to the branding so that they could protect it for generations to come. As his videos come out, it ends up that he ends up getting into deals to actually purchase the entire company and the rights outright. And it's like, whoa, like that's a big deal, because now his organization that he's set up to take this over now has complete control over it.
But what is his company and what do they do?
So it's
Currently?
going to be Commodore, and he's going to
He
revive the
bought-
Commodore brand. He bought the company
bought.
Commodore,
Oh wow.
and that means it protects all the trademarks, and it gives him the vehicle to be able to do stuff with it, not just to protect retro computing, but to also now innovate and come out with some new ideas as well. Here's the big thing. So that was part one of the video, dealt with that whole backstory and how he got on this journey. And then he did part two of the video, which just came out in this last weekend. And it's a big deal. Like, it was one thing to see that he got Commodore, but the people that he's brought on with him is probably the more impressive aspect. He's got Bill Hurd in his corner. He's got Michael Tomchik in his corner. Bob Yanis and Al Sharpenter, who Bill Hurd is still friends with, are kind of now in his corner. These are all people that used to work at Commodore back in the day.
Oh, wow.
These are Al Sharpenter and Bob Yanis. They're the guys who designed the sound chip and the circuitry that went into the Commodore 64 and all the other Commodore computers. Bill Hurd designed and developed the Commodore 128. To have these people in his corner, like from the old days, the old guard that was at the company, to now be there and to consult with him, that is a huge deal. So it's going to be really
bit of talent.
Yeah, it's going to be
What is-
really exciting to see what kinds of stuff comes out from this.
Yeah, do you know, are they like, what exactly is their goal then? Where do they want to take it? Like, do they want to take it to new horizons, or do they want to stay in kind of like their retro niche? Or like, are they trying to innovate and make new?
It's a little bit of both. Primarily, the original mission was to protect the trademark.
Mhm.
And the reason why they wanted to protect the trademarks and save it for the retro community is because, so here's the other aspect of the story. Since Commodore's been out of business, there's been lots of people that still enjoy the computer and still develop new things for it. So we have things like IDE hard drive interfaces, Ethernet networking cartridges that you can plug in to do Ethernet networking on your Commodore, Wi-Fi adapters that plug into your Commodore 64 so it can get on the Wi-Fi.
Wow.
New
And
games.
is all
People
of
are
this-
developing games. But I'm getting to this.
Okay.
All these people want to be able to market it as a Commodore product, but because the trademarks were in control by somebody else, in order to get trademark licensing, it was an astronomical price. It didn't fit their budget, because these are little hobbyist guys. They're just doing a handful of devices and selling them on eBay or the internet or Amazon or something to get a couple bucks off of it. So he's securing the trademarks to make that more available to the retro community that continues to develop new things for the old platform. Okay, so what other questions do you have?
Well, so what is the appeal to? I mean, why are people putting their Commodore 64s on the Wi-Fi? I mean, is it purely just for that retro, like just the nostalgia and just kind of for fun, or is there like a?
Can I venture a guess, Mike?
Go for it, John.
Jackson, you've used a Raspberry Pi, right?
Yeah.
So why would you use that when you've got a Intel Core or whatever on your desktop? You got a way more powerful computer that can do light years more work than a Raspberry Pi.
Sometimes you don't need it. You need a cheap solution.
Okay, but why would you develop extra little things that make it work that much more like a PC on your cheap solution. Like you can make a Raspberry Pi into a full desktop. Give it
You
Wi-Fi, give it Ethernet, give it.
Might not enjoy that, but you
Which
could.
people have, actually.
Yep. So it's one of those where you're taking old nostalgic tech and bringing it into today's world and making it exciting again. Mike, did I get it right?
Yeah, that's part of it. That is a good part of it. Putting a Commodore 64 on the internet is because people don't have landline BBS telephone lines anymore. Using a traditional modem actually kind of doesn't work anymore because everything has gone digital.
Mhm.
And so, and besides that, we don't want to communicate at 1200 BPS or 2400 BPS. We want to go as fast as we possibly can. So you stick a Wi-Fi adapter onto your Commodore 64. Now, instead of dialing a phone number to get to a bulletin board system, you can type in an IP address and telnet to a BBS system and be able to do it as fast as your telnet application can do it on a Commodore 64. So there's lots of reasons why people are doing this. Why would you want to connect an IDE hard drive to it? Because an IDE hard drive is going to hold many, many megabytes worth of information, whereas your old Commodore 1541 disk drive only holds one disk at a time and has a capacity of 172 kilobytes. So that it's keeping that nostalgia alive by being able to adapt newer hardware and newer technologies into it. And then I can sit down, I can play my old games, and I can do all kinds of other things.
You
So
bring
yeah,
them
really,
back
really
the
exciting
past.
stuff. Yeah, you're bringing back the past. And yeah, you can run an emulator on your computer? Yeah, I've done it all the time. I've got Commodore 64 emulators that I run, but there's something different about using the actual hardware
Well,
and seeing that it works and watching it work and it works the way it's supposed to. Because as good as an emulator is, an emulator still has not perfectly emulated all the nuance of the circuitry that's
All
in
the
a Commodore
features.
64 and all the features and everything.
All the bugs.
now I'll say something about that. I was actually just having a discussion with some of my like-minded friends that are in electrical and computer engineering, and we got onto this because we were talking about old cars and like we just like the interior of an old car, the
Mhm.
radio, the AC, like, and we were just talking about how unfortunate it is that in newer cars that everything has turned into just a screen. And I hate that person. I hate it. I love my dials. I love being able to twist the volume knob. I like being able to push a button for the
Mhm.
AC or whatever. And there's just a certain feel to that I would much prefer rather than have a digital screen that might have more capabilities and more options, but I want my buttons. And the same goes for like you see this in the audio industry. They have those digital displays that have all their audio controls on it, but you just don't see them used.
Right.
People have the huge panels with their dials and
The sliders.
the sliders and the switches, like
Yeah.
that could all be easily turned digital, but sometimes you don't want, and sometimes you don't want digital because you do want an analog signal with audio for various reasons. But sometimes it's even it's doing the digital to analog conversion, even though it is sliders and dials and all of that.
Yeah.
But I think I understand that, at least, like I get that the retro feel, or just there's something to it, and like what you're saying with an emulator, it's like I can emulate a Game Boy or all these other old things, but there's something about the old arcades that was just so nice. You got to go to one ginormous machine to play one game, and it was so much fun. And
Mhm.
it's unfortunate that I feel like those arcades are kind of going away, because that was so much fun to go play the simple, Pac-Man at an arcade on with a joystick and two buttons. That was fun.
Right. Exactly. And it's like,
There
I
was a
think it's
lot of engineering behind that stuff. Like the user experience to sit down at an upright arcade and the joystick that was there. Those things were designed to be like teenager proof, angry teenager proof.
yeah, definitely.
You don't get that
And
nowadays.
and I think anything as humans, we have a desire to connect with things that are old and from the past. I mean, my other passion is railroading, and I love watching steam locomotives. That's not something that's economical in today's age, but it's impressive to watch. To think about the fact that people sat down and figured out how to light a piece of coal on fire, to heat a bucket of water, to turn it into steam, and then take that steam and use it to do work. And so steam locomotives are a fascinating thing. You look at people that are passionate about old sailing vessels, um, old cars. Jackson, do you know how to drive a stick shift?
Yeah, it's been a long
Oh,
time. I don't drive one anymore, but I do know.
it's amazing because you can't find a lot of people your age that even know how to drive a stick shift.
No,
It's
I
an
learned.
millennial device.
Yeah.
I actually learned how to drive. This is funny. I learned how to drive stick shift on an original World War II Jeep that was actually used in
Oh,
the
that's
war.
really cool.
My
That's
grandpa, yeah, he's got one all that he uses on his farmland, and so I learned driving around, the fields in this old World War II Jeep. It's a miracle that it still runs.
I got one almost like that. I learned on a 73 VW Bug.
Nice.
That's impressive. I've ridden in a 73 VW Bug, but I wasn't old enough at the time to ever drive it.
You learn how to use 2 feet to activate 3 pedals at the same time.
That's what I've heard.
It was fun. I love that thing. I can't believe I survived my teenage years.
So,
Don't make me
John,
do that anymore.
what's your favorite retro computer?
Honestly, it's the one that I grew up with, the Texas Instruments TI 99-4A.
Nice.
Got one. It's been a minute since I pulled it out and played with it, but yeah, I spent many a night trying to figure out how to code on that thing. I had books. I'd type it in. For the life of me, I couldn't figure out how to modify the code to make it do what I wanted, beyond just adding an extra line into a basics set. Yeah, if you remember basic, you had to do 10 function, 20 function, 30 function.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was my beginning. A lot of the skills I learned there, I brought into DOS, and it was really a one-to-one connection there. But yeah, my heart's always into the Texas Instruments. Did you know they had a speech module for that thing?
Yeah, I do. I did know that. My next door neighbor, they had Texas Instruments, and my friend that lived next door, his older brother showed up one day and said, "Yeah, it speaks. This is a speech module." Like, wow, I didn't know that. I was like, really cool.
If anybody hears of one, let me know. I'm very interested in acquiring one.
That's cool.
But
anyway, so best wishes to Perry Fractic. That's great news. It's a great endeavor. I'm sure he's also sweating like crazy because he's got to figure out how to finish the deal. It's not quite done there yet. The report is that he's looking for angel investors of 25,000 or more to help, finish the deal. But at some point, there may be a possibility for just the everyday user to maybe invest in it a little bit. So that'll be interesting to see how it all shapes out and what kind of new things that they come out with. The other thing too about this is that in addition to a lot of the old people coming on board to help him out with this, he's also got some of the newer people. So we talked about the newer devices. Jackson, one of the newer devices that's out there is there's a guy that makes his name's Gideon, and he makes the 1541 Ultimate, or Ultimate 1541 is what he's branded it as. And it started out, he was making a cartridge to emulate the disk drive for a Commodore 64. And then it turned into, I'm also going to put in a virtual printer on it. And then it's going to be, you can plug in a USB flash drive instead of just SD cards. And then it kind of became a whole bunch of other things for the cartridge. And then he evolved it into, he built basically a new motherboard that runs FPGA, I think, circuitry, but emulates the Commodore hardware and everything. And because it's newer technology, he's like built it with HDMI out and other bells and whistles that help it out that way. But it runs the stock Commodore 64 ROM set to be able to run the computer. And you can put also, like the sound chip, you can put actual Commodore sound chips in it. So instead of running the emulated sound chip, you can run an actual SID sound chip in it. Things like that. It's just a bunch of different things like that. Anyway, he's on board with it too. So I think he's looking to market his stuff as officially Commodore branded. And there's some other developers of the newer stuff that are on board too. It's really quite a thing to see. It's going to be really interesting to see what they come out with in the next year or so.
So
Very
exciting.
cool.
Well, definitely, I want to talk more about this in the next few episodes as that evolves.
Yeah, definitely.
But I want to pivot into our last one. Let's jump into a story that I'm bringing to the table. I want to make you guys aware of this. Kind of a cybersecurity nightmare for all of us. North Korea has been caught doing remote jobs. Meaning,
Oh, really?
if we post a job and we say you can work from anywhere, there's a high chance that somebody from North Korea is going to apply, get the job, and they'll ship a laptop somewhere in the U.S. to one of their somebody in their supply chain, set up the laptop in a house, and use that internet connection to connect to our network. So we see that it's a U.S.-based worker. We see that it's their house. We see that our worker's doing work for us. But that is not the case.
Send them
They're
the
just
keys to
using
the
that as
kingdom.
Yep. That jump box is giving them access to ours, and we don't know any better because we're not monitoring that system as well as we could. Or worse yet, the laptop that they're using has been configured to have virtual machines. So we connect to our corporate laptop there, and they connect to a console access of that machine so they can do whatever they want, inject malware, inject payloads, anything they want to do into our corporate system. Or worse yet, hack into our network and then pivot out of that to hack into other companies. There's been a couple houses recently that have been raided that have dozens, if not hundreds, of laptops set up in this form.
Yikes.
And it's kind of frightening. I mean, the ingenuity behind it is brilliant. I got to tip my hat to that.
Yeah.
But you know, if you got a house full of laptops and they're all doing remote work for companies, but it's like the espionage center, oh my goodness.
So how do
Yeah,
you
I'm
vet
saying.
and how do you do that? All of that?
Well, I never hire somebody unless I meet them face to face.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's an easy way.
I mean,
But
everybody
it's
I've
these
hired, I've had lunch with.
it's these big. Is it bigger companies that have been they've been doing this? Like I know I've seen. I remember doing the job searches, and I remember seeing work from anywhere. Just do this work for us. It never occurred to me that somebody would pretend to be something they're not and get shipped a laptop. That's crazy. I would have
Happens
thought that there
all
would
the
be
time.
some type of vetting process where they'd be able to verify your identity and verify your address and all that stuff.
It all depends how deep your pockets are as a company. Like if your seed money is like $500 million and you have to hire 3,000 people and you have to have that done in the next 3 months, 1,000 people in 3 months, that's tough. You're going to onboard them fast. You're going to buy hardware. You're going to be throwing things out so fast, nobody's double checking anything. Like you do your basic check, and all they have to do is just know what those basic checks are and say the right words, and boom, they now have a laptop into your network.
Exactly. I mean,
VPN
you're gonna,
connection, everything.
yeah, VPN. I was just thinking that you're pre-configured with a VPN and maybe some email access, and
And you trust them because you're hiring them
Yeah.
for your job.
Yikes.
So that's
It's like
the thing.
that brings up in my mind, like, the question is like, well, if you're having to hire someone that you don't necessarily need to be like monitoring or have interaction with, and maybe that job ought to be completed by a program or something. I mean, and I
Well,
know there are
it is
jobs out there that do need like
is
some
a
minimal
human.
amount of human interaction in there.
Yeah, it is a human. They attend the meetings, they do all the things, but they just run a filter on top of things to keep it. We've talked about how deep fakes are a thing. They
Yeah.
just run a deep fake.
well, and that's the thing too, is like they got to be like posing as a somewhat valuable worker, so they got to be keeping up with the work and getting the job done to stick around.
Well,
Mhm.
I gotta think they're probably maybe using Chat GPT or something to help finish their tasks, or I don't know.
more than likely, it's more than one person that is on the other end of it, because you could have
And
like
that's yeah,
a team of people,
just like
one person doing the actual work, and the rest of them doing the subterfuge.
right.
Think of it, guys. For the price of one, you've hired a whole team of hackers.
Except they're working against your company.
Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe we just set up a shell company for them to hack, a misinformation company.
Well, that's great. I'm only paying the collective of them $15 an hour. Well, yeah, except that they just drained your bank account.
Well, I wonder
What
if the government / military gets smart and they start posting online jobs and they kind of flip the tables on them.
That's one of the ways they've found some of these laptop farms is they go looking for them. So it's going to be a cat and mouse. Where that hits us is if we're posting a remote job, there's going to be new rules, new regulations on things. I think it's good. I think there's an opportunity for good double checks to be in there, such as go have lunch with the person before you hire them. But even then, all it takes is an actor to come fly out to the space and be the stand-in.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean they've got to have constituents in the United States to kind of make the whole thing. I mean, they have to have somebody who's renting out a home and setting up the laptops and doing all of that. So
I do
yeah,
recall
I mean
seeing a report a few months back of somebody that was involved in something like this, and they are facing federal time after it was all revealed.
yeah, I mean, does that fall
Good.
under treason, right?
Yes.
With it? Yeah,
It can. It depends on what activities you were engaged in.
right.
But I mean, you take somebody that's just kind of down and out on their luck and say, I will pay you $10,000 to put this laptop in your house. It's going to be a very moral person to say, I don't want your cash. No.
Yeah.
Well, I put it in my house, but I didn't turn it on.
Somehow it still hacked everything. So, I mean, it's one of those I wanted to tell you guys about that on the podcast too, just because I want you guys aware of it, that's a thing people are going to ask you about. But unfortunately, I think we had too good of a conversation today. We're at the bottom of our hour. But I don't know, Jackson, what do you think of this laptop from North Korea thing? What's your last thought?
My last thought is don't commit treason and happy 4th. Celebrate the 4th instead of committing treason.
Wait a minute, the day we celebrate. Wait.
Right, it is the 4th. Well, happy 4th of July, everybody. We'll catch you on the next close encounter of our tech kind. Until then, I'm John.
I'm Mike.
I'm Jackson.
I'm going to celebrate the 4th by